I've been testing the Vitruvian Trainer Plus home gym over the past few months. Now, this is a smart strength device that utilizes magnetic digital loading and a variety of attachments that can be used to replace the need from having a barbell, dumbbell, or even a cable machine at home. And I have to say, I honestly wasn't sure how I would feel about this device when I first got it. Even though I had done demos and had tried it out, it really took me a while using it for a number of actual workouts to really even start to form my opinion on this. And for the most part, as I'll discuss, there is a lot of great things to say about the Vitruvian Trainer Plus, especially in terms of the hardware, how it feels to use, and how they handle the subscription model. I've been pretty impressed. Now, that's not to say it is perfect, because there are some issues that I think you should be aware of before making a big investment like this. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And if you're a big fan of fitness tech and appreciate unbiased reviews that get right to the point without wasting your time, make sure to like this video or even subscribe to connect the watts if you want to see more just like this. Okay, so first up, we got to talk about the design of the Vitruvian Trainer Plus. It is a 46-inch by 20-inch platform that is raised about 4.5 inches off the ground. So it's fairly compact and doesn't take up too much space. It's also fairly light, weighing only around 80 pounds. And so with a handle on one side and wheels on the other, it's pretty easy to maneuver around should you need to store or move it somewhere. Another thing that you might notice, unlike every other connected fitness device nowadays, there is no screen included here. Instead, you control the Vitruvian Trainer Plus with an app on your phone or tablet, which you can also have streamed over to a TV. And overall, I really like this more simplistic design. I like that it doesn't take up very much space. I like that I can move it around easily. And I even like that there is not a screen, because while they have some great content to follow along to, which I'll talk more about later on, a lot of the times I just like to do my own workouts on it, and I don't really need or want a screen here. And I think by not having one, it allows the Vitruvian Trainer Plus to look nicer when it's not in use, be easier to maneuver around, and ultimately, I think it increases the longevity of the equipment down the road. Also with this design, there are colorful lights on the sides, which can be adjusted to your preference. And I know not everybody is a huge fan of these, but personally, I sort of like it, and you have the option, of course, to turn them off. The only negative aspect of this design is that with this single platform, you do become limited on some movements that you could do if there were uprights, like you see with other devices like tonal and Spedience. But at least for me, I never felt really limited on what I could do. And again, the nice thing about having this more simple design like this is that you can expand on it if you'd like. And I have seen and tried an optional accessory that's coming out in a little bit called the V-frame, which is great for those who want to add more of those movement capabilities. But I don't think everybody will want or need that V-frame, and the fact that you don't have to get it, especially if you are limited on space, is a really big part about why I like this design so much. So how does the Vitruvian Trainer Plus feel to use? Well, the first thing to know is that it does use digital magnetic resistance, which means it does feel quite a bit different than weights like barbells or dumbbells, primarily because the force is always being applied without momentum, which means that 100 pounds on here feels much harder than 100 pounds of free weights. In fact, I would say that it easily feels a good 20% heavier, which if you consider the fact that the Vitruvian Trainer Plus is capable of loading up to 440 pounds, that is really impressive and far more loading than almost anybody will ever need. And that's a great thing, because one of the limitations for other devices like this is that they tend to be capped at around 200 pounds, which while that's still going to be enough for a lot of people, it's not going to be enough for many others. So Vitruvian can really keep up and be used no matter how strong that you get over time. Now, the only issue that I did come across was that even though the Vitruvian Trainer Plus did an amazing job going heavy, the lightest it could go was around 8.8 pounds. So when my wife would try to use it and try some of the smaller accessory movements, it would just be too heavy. However, I did notice a new update literally as I was filming this review that decreased that minimum weight down from 8.8 pounds all the way down to 2.2 pounds, which is great, and I am super happy that that update was made. Another thing that I was impressed with here was just how safe I felt while lifting with the Vitruvian Trainer Plus, as it really goes the extra mile when it comes to safety. For one, it has you complete 3 unloaded reps before each set starts so that it knows which range of motion to look for when counting your reps, and when to unload the weight should you go beyond that range of motion or get stuck near the bottom for too long. Secondly, with the barbell attachment, they have a number of different length safety cables so that should everything else go wrong, and I have never seen it ever go wrong, but should it go wrong, the barbell cannot be pulled lower than these safety cables will allow. And finally, when you start a new account with Vitruvian Plus, it does cap all of the lifts for you at first. Then after doing the strength assessment or just doing sets of various movements to show your lifting capabilities, the Vitruvian Plus will start to allow heavier and heavier weights to be lifted, which to be fair can be a little annoying, but it expands pretty quickly if you take that strength assessment. And I do appreciate the reason for this to ensure that somebody doesn't accidentally hurt themselves by sliding the weight way too high relative to what they can handle. And for the most part, lifting with the Vitruvian Trainer Plus feels great. I think when it comes to movements, when the barbell or handle stays with you, like a squat, or when it's lowered, like when doing rows, that is when it feels one-to-one as good as free weights. The only movements that I don't think feel as good as a more traditional barbell or dumbbell are just some of the pressing movements. And I don't know why nobody ever mentions this, as it's pretty obvious if you just watch somebody using the Vitruvian Trainer Plus. And it's not just this, any magnetically loaded strength machine is like this, but pressing definitely feels less stable, and not necessarily in a dangerous sort of way. And in fact, the additional need to stabilize your shoulder has its own benefits as well, but you definitely feel that instability as you press, both overhead and horizontally, whereas you don't really feel that on any other movement type. But that being only the real big difference when you compare the space effectiveness of having something like the Vitruvian Trainer Plus at home, I don't think it's going to be a huge deal breaker for most. So talking about accessories, the base Vitruvian Trainer Plus comes with 2 basic handles, ankle straps, and a little connection device that allows you to connect the 2 handles together should you want to for some movements. You can also opt for the entry kit, which includes more premium heavier handles, a barbell with a variety of safety cables, a tricep rope, and a workout mat. Or you can choose the Pro Kit, which includes all of that and an additional short bar, bench press, and lifting belt. All the accessories have their place and all add a substantial amount that you can do with the Vitruvian Trainer Plus. If you can swing it, I definitely suggest the Pro Kit, though it is nice that you can start with less at first and then get more down the road. The premium handles, the short bar, and the barbell all have this sort of soft grip to it, which I wouldn't have thought I would like compared to a more traditional bar with knurling, but they actually feel pretty great to use and are very grippy. I've deadlifted close to 400 pounds on the Vitruvian Trainer, and I'm surprised, but I do like the way this barbell feels. The bench here is also pretty nice with a design that has a short leg on one side so that even with the elevated platform, it sits nice and flat. And it can be rotated for more of an incline press. It's not the greatest bench around by any means, but it definitely does the job well enough. And the other accessory that I really have enjoyed quite a bit is the lifting belt. Typically, you need a pretty extensive setup to use something like this with traditional weights, but it is very easy to implement here, and it's a great way to move the load from your back or your arms down to your hips for a variety of movements like squats, lunges, or even weighted push-ups. And the mat, of course, is nice to have, especially for certain movements that can be a bit rough without something like this between your knees and the hard platform. Overall, the accessories are solid and very well made. My only complaint is that there isn't yet an option for some sort of storage rack or something to keep all of these accessories organized. For now, I just sort of put them all in a drawer and take out whatever I need for each workout, but I really wish they came out with something I could just place next to the Vitruvian Trainer to help keep everything together. But for now, the drawer will have to do. Okay, so before I discuss how I feel about the movement options and the workout builder and the classes, I want to first just address the elephant in the room when it comes to connected fitness devices like this: the subscription. And while yes, the Vitruvian Trainer Plus does have an optional subscription, the way they go about it is significantly more consumer friendly than most other devices. First off, there is an entire year of all access membership that is included for free when you purchase it, which is great because it's a fairly expensive device and it's nice not to have to worry about making additional monthly payments right out the gate. And the membership comes with unlimited profiles because it's really just tied to this machine. But here's what I really like about the membership here. It's really optional, depending on what you want to use the Vitruvian Trainer Plus for. Even without the membership, you can access the entire movement library, you can still do the various lifting modes, and you can still create your own workouts. The only thing you lose out on really is the included classes and pre-built programs, your training history, which to be honest isn't a huge loss, and whatever other premium features that Vitruvian comes out with in the future. But it is still completely usable. And when you compare that with Tonal, for example, which shuts down pretty much everything that you can do without its $60 per month membership, the Vitruvian Trainer Plus is just 10 times more consumer friendly. Not to mention that it is also cheaper at just $39 per month to keep your all access account after that first year, and an option which I think is a pretty fair deal. You can even buy a lifetime membership for $990, which can save you a lot of money in the long term. That said, let's talk about the included classes and programs on the Vitruvian Trainer Plus. So in terms of programs, they have a pretty decent amount, both instructor-led and self-paced programs. Instructor-led programs are like traditional classes where a coach demos the movements and helps you follow along to the workout with cues and tips. And these of course are great, especially for those new to strength training or who just enjoy having a coach to learn from and follow along to. The self-paced programs are not led by a trainer, but the workouts are built out for you to start and follow along to at your own pace. And this is definitely something that someone like me, who has been lifting for a really long time, appreciates. Because while the coaches on here are great, I often just like to lift at my own pace and not to keep up or listen to a coach. Either way, all of the programs are built with weekly progressions in mind, and in general, the workout designs here are very well done. You can also browse among the hundreds of available classes individually, as well as filtered through them by time, equipment, muscle groups, or even the personal trainer. Now, whenever you take a class by itself, or if it's part of a program, even if it's an instructor-led class, you can choose to view it as a workout instead, meaning, again, you can just follow along to the program without having to follow along to the instructor. Additionally, when you load up a class, all of the weights for all of the movements are already set up for you based on your personal workout history and how heavy the program wants you to be going. Of course, this can be adjusted during the workout as you go through it, but even before the workout starts, there is a slider which allows you to adjust all of the weights down as far as 20% from the suggestions or up 20% more than the suggestions, which is especially nice if you repeat a workout, so you can slide everything up just a few percentage points to make sure you are forcing yourself to progress. The only thing that I don't really like about the instructor-led classes, it's because all of them are designed to be taken alongside a coach on a screen. Almost all of the exercises are set up by time instead of reps. So instead of 8 reps, it might be, say, 30 seconds, which again, it makes sense if you're following along to a class format. I just prefer to take the time that I need for a certain number of reps. Again, it won't be a big deal for most, but it is one of the reasons why I preferred for the most part to create my own custom workouts. So if you want to do something outside of a class, you can select the workout tab and either select movements one by one or even create your own custom workout. The movement library here is pretty extensive, but honestly, if there is something missing, you can still just do whatever you want when selecting any movement, because again, it determines the reps by the range of motion that you perform in advance of each set. You can sort the movements by type or equipment, or just search for movements directly. It can be a little cumbersome to find specific movements at times, but overall it works pretty well. Once a movement is selected, you'll first will want to choose which lifting mode you want to use. Currently, they have 4 options. When you select pump mode, it'll go up to the weight you choose if you move fairly quickly. However, if you move the weight up slowly, it won't go up to that max load, and instead will keep it lower so you can continue finishing the rep. And this is a great option for those newer to lifting or for movements where you're not really quite sure how much you can lift, or really anybody who doesn't want to have to think very hard about any of this at all and just have the weight be decided by your speed. You'll also see a progression and regression option for all of these modes, and this just allows you to have the weight increase or decrease after each rep. It's not something that I use very often, but it's a feature that's pretty cool to throw in every once in a while. Then there is a mode called time under tension, which is very unique in that the load that you select starts at the top of the movement, so say the top of a squat. Then as you lower the weight, the load will stay there if you go down slow and controlled, but the weight will lower if you go down too fast. And then if you want the load to be lighter on the way up, you can pause at the bottom, and then it will reload to the max weight again when you get to the top. There's even an option here called Beast Mode, which takes this even further so that the load increases faster at the top and makes you have to wait even longer at the bottom if you want to deload it. Next is Old School Mode, which basically keeps the load constant and feels the most like traditional weightlifting. And I have to say, about 90% of the time, I would just keep Old School Mode on because I like selecting a load and keeping it constant throughout the entire range of motion and progressing that number week to week. I'm just old school, I guess. And then there's eccentric only, which means it'll load up at the top of the movement and then it'll completely deload when you get to the bottom. So you can really just overload a movement using a heavier weight than you ever could because you don't have to lift that weight back up, which I think is super cool. And with all these modes, they are just things you could never do with traditional weights. That said, I do sort of wish that the eccentric mode had a few more options, like being able to add some load to the concentric or upward phase of a movement, but even still, I did enjoy using it. Then of course, you can't select the number of reps, or instead you can choose a certain duration for a movement. And then finally here on the movement selection, you can adjust the workout sounds. So if enabled, you can hear specific sounds at the top of the rep, or when your calibration reps are complete, or after you complete a set, and I did find this to be very useful. Now, the only problem I had with selecting movements a la carte like this was there really isn't a good way to superset movements easily. The easiest way for me was to favorite two movements so they both showed up at the top of the list, which would make it easier to go back and forth between the two, but in general, it's much better to actually create a custom workout if you want to do some things like supersetting. And before I discuss the custom workouts, I do want to mention that I have seen a new mode for the Vitruvian Trainer Plus that hasn't been released quite yet that allows for a free lift mode, meaning you can just go back and forth between whichever lifts that you want to do without having to find them in the movement list. And so I'll keep my eye out for that when it's released. So yes, custom workouts. They are fairly well done here. You can add whichever movements you'd like, adjust them, add sets, change reps and modes, add rests, and move them around in whichever order you please. It's not the smoothest workout builder that I've ever used, but it is pretty functional. And if you make a workout, you can share it with others. So over time, I anticipate there to be a lot of pre-built workouts and programs made from various coaches for the Vitruvian Trainer Plus that you can find online and add to your account, which I think will be pretty cool. So when it comes to progression and tracking, that is where the Vitruvian Trainer Plus is easily at its weakest. They have this strange star system where you earn stars after every lift depending on the weight and the reps, but it's not very clear at all. Obviously, you're supposed to be encouraged to get a higher number of stars, but it doesn't really do that. There's even a leaderboard that you can join if you want to compare daily or weekly or monthly stars, but this whole system needs to be rehauled because I don't think it makes a lot of sense or provides a lot of encouragement or guidance. Now, in terms of tracking weights, the Vitruvian Trainer Plus will record your best lifts and associated reps for a given movement over time. Now, you can only see this through your profile and not when a movement is selected, which feels sort of like a miss here. And there is somewhat of a workout tracker, but not really, especially if you tend to choose one movement at a time, which each is then treated as its own workout. So it ends up being pretty unorganized and difficult to try and sort through. So when it comes to the Vitruvian Trainer Plus, it's very much the hardware that is the big standout. Whereas I think the app could use a lot of work in order to be just as good. It's not bad by any means and it's absolutely workable for now, but yeah, I think if they want to make the subscription worth it long term, there's a lot of improvements that need to be made here. But that's okay, because the most important thing, in my opinion, as a consumer, is that the hardware is solid, and it is really impressive here. That is really the one thing that once you buy it cannot be improved, and so it's much better to have a piece of equipment that is great and an app that could use some work than the other way around. And overall, the Vitruvian Trainer Plus is a device that I think more and more people are going to be looking at as a great, space-efficient, and just very useful alternative to train with than the traditional barbell and dumbbell setup. Personally, I have all the equipment you could ever want in my house, and I still prefer the Vitruvian Trainer Plus to even barbells for a lot of my lifting. And maybe not the pressing so much, but definitely for squatting and deadlifting, and all kinds of accessory movements are just great and much easier to use and load up here. I am impressed with what the company has been doing with it, and I'm looking forward to trying out their new V-frame accessory. And overall, if you're looking for a smart home gym, especially a space-efficient one, I highly recommend it. And if you want to learn more about the Vitruvian Trainer Plus, you can watch my complete beginner's guide here. As always, appreciate you being here. This is Colin Jenkins with Connect the Watts, and I'll see you next time.